Hi there, Rachel here from the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. As you know, we try to keep our show rated about PG-13 and try to be as family-friendly as possible. However, every now and then we do a topic that's a bit more mature, a bit more adult. And in this case, this week, that is what's happening. So just be aware that this week's topic is not so PG-13, not so family-friendly. So keep that in mind just in case you have little ones about.
This is Jennifer Hale, and you're listening to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And, I should go.
The tangents week continue all the way to episode 268 of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And sometimes even pushing the big red button does not turn out the way you think it should. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. So glad you joined us. Let's start off like we're doing right for the virtual table and see who's joined us this week.
This is Brittany in Bethlehem.
This is Chrissy in Salt Lake City.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. For those of you that, I don't want to say celebrate or honor, but suffer through daylight savings, hopefully you're doing okay.
I'm just going to say this, and I've heard it said by a variety of other people all over the place. I don't care what your political persuasion is, what you're voting in, anything else. If you're running for office, I don't care if you're running for county dog catcher. If you promise to end this time change nonsense, you're going to get elected. I'm just saying.
Right? Yeah.
Because I'm tired of this. It's like, everyone hates this. Can't we just stop, please?
Why do we even need it anymore?
We don't. And everyone blames the farmers. And I'm saying, and as a farm kid, I say, that's bullcrap. Yeah. Even the farmers hate it too.
It's like, you're going to get your work done regardless of what the time on the clock says.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it's like, oh, the sun's up. I'm going to do some work outside. Is the sun not up? Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'm not going to work outside.
Yeah. Tractors have headlights now. It's okay.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, that's my customary daylight savings rant.
Yeah.
And that it is an election year. So yeah, if anyone's running, I don't care what office you're running for, just promise you'll get rid of daylight savings time. I'm certain you will win because people will vote for you. That's all you have to do.
Make it
that's your
national thing.
Yeah.
Because right now it's only a state thing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like we already have time zones.
Exactly.
And that makes sense because the sun travels. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a science thing. Daylight savings, it's a made up thing. Yeah. Anyway. I get grumpy this time of year. And I'm even more grumpy this year because I have a newborn and she likes to get up in the middle of the night and eat.
So she doesn't care what time it is.
She doesn't care what time it is. She's hungry. She wakes up and I lose that hour. Ugh. Anyway, that's it. That's all.
Yep. All right. Well, we don't really have a whole lot of news at the moment. As we're recording this, PopCon is teasing something on their Facebook page, but they're posting like every hour, like a little bit more, and they have it for several hours. I don't know what it is, so I don't know how much longer it's going to take before we actually get whatever this tease is. So,
what's the betting that like when we finish and sign off and everything, stop recording, they'll announce whatever
probably
it is.
That'll probably be exactly what will happen. So,
yep.
So there's that. Although they did confirm that they are going to be doing Twisted Tunes at PopCon again this year. So
Oh,
maybe I'll actually make it this year.
Yeah, you need to.
Yes.
I'm gonna.
I've
push
seen those
it.
on YouTube.
I keep getting like the last like 5 minutes of it when they do it, and that's about it. Like one of these years, I'm actually going to get the entire thing.
I know it's because they have to schedule them for like an hour and a half instead of like a panel usually goes like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, it does at ours, but yeah, so it's a little bit longer. So it's kind of hard to schedule, especially if there's something you really want to see and it's going opposite or half of it or anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, go see it if you can.
Yes.
That goes for our listeners. If you're going to a con and they're doing Twisted Tunes there, it's so good and it's so funny. It's a blast.
Yeah, I definitely would love to see it live. Like I said, like I've seen like the things that they have on YouTube occasionally, but one of these days.
Yep.
Even if you don't know the voice actors that are participating in it, it's just fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they will bring somebody out who you do know, or maybe you don't know them by name, but then they start doing their voice. You're like, oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a good time.
So there's that. So that's exciting. And then a piece of 10 o'clock news is Max von Sydow has passed away at the age of 90. So that's pretty darn good as far as longevity. And according to IMDb, as an actor, he has 163 credits.
That's a lot.
Yes. Well, he was 90 and he started in the 1940s. So
those working actors, they're in everything.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he's been in a lot of various things. So just kind of depends on what what kind of movie style trips your trigger. He's probably been in something that you will enjoy if you haven't seen it yet. So like he played Jesus in The Greatest Story Ever Told. He was on Game of Thrones as the Three-Eyed Raven. That's probably one of the most recent things that people might recognize him from. He was in Star Wars The Force Awakens as Lor San Tekka. I don't remember which character that is.
Was that the guy at the Was that the guy at the beginning?
The one at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah,
that was talking to Poe.
Yeah, he says, to talk about Leia, to me, she'll always be royalty.
Yeah.
I think that's him. So. I would have to look up to be sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to admit, it's been a while since I've seen Force Awakens.
Yeah. But besides that, probably the one of the most notable, besides some of the horror movies that he's done, like he did Shutter Island, he was in The Exorcist, The Seventh Seal. He's been in a lot of movies like that, but most of us, or I say a good chunk of us, know him best as the Emperor Ming in Flash Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's been a lot of stuff. So
yeah, so
take your pick.
So honor his memory. Go find your favorite Max von Sydow role movie and go watch it.
Go watch
Flash. That is. Every time I hear of these, someone who passes away in their 80s, 90s, I'm just like, good on you. Mm-hmm. We'll miss you, but you left us some great stuff. So thank you. And yep.
Mm-hmm. So that's really it for news, and we don't have any feedback. I did want to mention though that I went to because when she was on, it was pre-opening, but the Gal's Guide to the Galaxy Women's Library is now open here in Indiana. It's in Noblesville at the Nickel Plates Arts Center, which is an old house that they've converted into a place that's got like an art gallery, and artists can actually go there and work. But then their stuff is also on display. So they are on the second floor in a room up there with bookshelves full of books about women, by women, for women. No, it's really cute. They've got even the 1,600 books that Leah had in her living room are now out. She's like, I got a floor again. And in the process of them opening, they've gotten like 38 more books donated. So if they don't have what you're looking for, odds are they'll probably get it at some point. And you can always give them suggestions too, like you're missing this biography or whatever. But it's cute. It's great that it's now open. You can sign up for a library account online if you like. Their catalog, so you can see what they have right now, is online. So if you can get up there, go check it out. Like a nice little reading nook in the room. So, if you don't necessarily have time to check something out, you could just sit there and peruse and check things out. And there's lots of like restaurants and stuff in that area too. So I went up there and had dinner, and then went to the opening, got to see Leah and chatted a little bit and checked the place out. And it's cool. It's very cool. Happy for her that this project that was just a germ of idea like 2 years ago is now finally a thing. And as she mentioned when she was on our Mulan episode, that they've got enough funding, they will stay open for at least a year. So
nice.
That was really cool. Really cool. And then I went to Who North America Saturday when they were having their celebration of the 42nd anniversary of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and they now have a screening room open. So that is something that they have been missing since they moved to this location, was the ability to show things and have people be able to come in, sit, watch movies, Doctor Who episodes, that sort of thing. But they finally converted what was one of the vaults, because this used to be for those that don't know, it used to be a fur shop that they made furs right there. And of course, at the time when fur was, in vogue, it was very pricey. So they had these like bank style vaults. They have two of them actually in the building. But the one that's facing the outside public part of the store has been, eventually that was going to be their screening room, and they finally got it set up with a screen and chairs and all sorts of stuff. So they were showing the old TV series, and then they were showing the movie with Martin Freeman when I got there. So that was really cool. So now when you go to Who North America, odds are that they're going to have Doctor Who episodes, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures. Who knows what they may be showing when you stop by the shop. But if you want to swing by, buy some things, kick up your feet for a while, and watch whatever they got showing, you can now.
Nice.
Yes, that's exciting.
One day I will make a pilgrimage to Indiana, and
yes,
that will be it. That will
all
be
the more reason why you guys need to come visit me.
Yep.
Come visit me. I've got lots of Fazoli's.
I know our last
guys from Traveling the Vortex.
Our last Fazoli's closed.
So
I still need to try it.
I got crack sticks and Who North America. What more do you need? And me, obviously. I'm here too. And Chauncey. So.
Yes, indeed.
But anyway, so yeah. So go check out the Gal's Guide to the Galaxy library. You can find information on their website, which I will put in the show notes. And then Who North America. go swing by them, buy stuff. I did. I didn't need to buy anything, but I still did.
Well, if you're gonna go,
I wasn't even in the shop that long. But I still walked out with stuff.
Yeah, that's how we are with the gaming and comic store that we go to. It's like, I don't need dice, but I need dice.
Oh, excuse me. Well, it's like I wanted to stop by and see, what was going on. They had some vendors there. Mm-hmm. Laura Van Anderock was there with some of her stuff. The gal that does the homemade, the geeky soaps, like the Good Omens that I've purchased from her. She was there selling some Hitchhiker related bath bombs. If I had a bathtub, I totally would have bought one, but I don't. I have showers. And then somebody was there selling Girl Scout cookies, but by the time I got there, they didn't have any that I liked left. So I still have not got my Girl Scout cookie fix, which is unusual for me for this late in the season, but that is my problem, not anybody else's. And I want to swing by and say hi. I haven't been there since Oktoberfest, so it's been a while. So, and to check out the screening room and all that fun stuff. So,
cool.
Yeah.
All of the good we did, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that to them, justice was done. See, a just world is a sane world. There was nothing sane about Chernobyl.
I'm pleased to report that the situation in Chernobyl is stable. In terms of radiation, I'm told it's the equivalent of a chest X-ray.
No, Chernobyl is on fire. And every atom of uranium is like a bullet, penetrating everything in its path. Metal, concrete, flesh. Now, Chernobyl holds over 3 trillion of these bullets. Some of them will not stop firing for 50,000 years.
Tell me how to put it out.
You are dealing with something that has never occurred on this planet before.
Cut the phone lines. Contain the spread of misinformation.
What will happen to our boys?
The pain is unimaginable. In 3 days to 3 weeks, you're dead.
You can see him, and you cannot touch him. Do you understand?
What happened on the night of the accident?
Asking the right question will get you the truth. There is no truth.
What happened there? What happened after? All of it. All of it. Madness.
That is that. So we will move on to this week's main topic, which was actually Chrissy's suggestion, and it went from, hey, I watched this, and we were like, well, none of us have watched it, to all of us have watched it.
Yes. And
have been consuming all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. That's kind of the weird thing about this one is, like, once you watch it, you're like, well, I need to know more about it. And I was the same way. It's we're talking about the HBO miniseries Chernobyl, which came out last May, I want to say, it was like that 5-part miniseries. I had not heard about it until, I guess, I don't know. We were talking about some awards thing, and it's like, oh, they did a thing about Chernobyl. Okay, cool. And then somehow one of the YouTube channels I watch is actually a sports YouTube channel. I've talked about it before. he was talking, you know, it was with the football season and the playoffs and stuff. He used a clip from the miniseries to make fun of the Ravens losing in the playoffs, which is not very, I don't know. It just does it. His use of the clip was funny, even though the scene is not in the show. But I was just like, what is this show? And then people were making comments like saying if something is 3.6 Rontgen, it's great. It's not great, not terrible. Like they're using, it's a meme now. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? And like, you know, the last few months of my pregnancy, I was, you know, sick and sore and tired. And like, by the time I would get done with my day, I just had no energy, nothing I wanted to do other than fall on the bed and watch YouTube videos on my phone. And so I kept seeing this meme, this line. I'm like, what is this? So I look it up and I'm like, Chernobyl. And then then YouTube, because the internet's kind of creepy that way, started recommending these things to me, these videos. And I'm like, well, okay, it's an HBO miniseries. Because I didn't watch Game of Thrones mostly because I don't really enjoy a lot of gratuitous violence and nudity in my entertainment. That's just my thing. If that's your thing, it's fine. So I'm like, well, I'm going to see if I can find out more about this. And what is it about? So I looked up some reviews, and I've shared some videos that basically the videos I watched to decide whether or not this was something I wanted to watch. And I knew, as much as I knew about Chernobyl, I knew it was the nuclear power plant explosion in the 80s in the Soviet Union at the time. I didn't know anything more about that. It's like, it's a thing that happened when I was 1, but that might as well be a million years ago.
Yeah, I was 3.
and getting into,
and Brittany didn't exist.
I was gonna say I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah, getting into the history of it, it's like, well, they kind of tried to cover it up anyway, because the Soviet Union, there's a line in the miniseries, like they're obsessed with not being humiliated, and you just get the idea whether or not you. I mean, this series. I mean, we've talked. Like I mentioned, it was nominated for lots of awards, and watching the series, it deserves all of them.
Yes.
And I'm kind of surprised.
Done really well, especially for only being 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, it is short.
It is, but it is
some other things, but it is packed with.
It is a gut punch. I mean,
yeah, it is.
Thinking of all the things that are included in it, it is paced so well. The writing is amazing. And there's one of the videos I watched. It's called A Masterclass in Perspective, and basically, this video
I've seen that.
Yeah. Like, you watch it talks about how it's plotted as if you're a writer, whether you're writing books or screenplays or whatever, it says use this as an example of how you tell a story from different character points of view, and that's what this show does. It's there's a book, and I actually checked it out from the library over the weekend. I have not gotten through it because, as much of a gut punch as this miniseries is, reading these stories, it's called The Voices from Chernobyl by Svetlana Alexievich. I'm not saying that name right.
We're going to apologize right here. None of us know Russian or Ukrainian or anything like that, so we're going to butcher a lot of names.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Despite how many times we pulled the names from the show in all the videos we watched, we still not.
Yeah. But the book that some of this information that they used in the miniseries comes from, it's firsthand accounts of people who lived in and around Chernobyl, lived in Pripyat, who were affected by the explosion. Like the first chapter is Lyudmila Ignatenko, the woman whose her husband was a firefighter, and and she was talking about it, and I'm like, so I watched this while I'm on maternity leave. I just had a baby girl.
Yeah, girls.
And I'm watching this story of this, she's part of the story of this woman whose husband is dying from radiation poisoning because he was one of the first responders. And, he dies horrifically as portrayed in the miniseries. and and she's pregnant, and when she gives birth, her baby girl only lives 4 hours. And they have that scene where she's recovering in the maternity ward, but she doesn't have a baby. But there's all these mothers with their new babies. I'm just like, maybe this isn't something I should be watching, but I can't stop watching it because I'm because I don't know, Rachel, you said something about in the chat how it like scratches your real stories from history itch.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm like that's how I felt watching this, even as hard as it is to watch, realizing these are real people. Yeah, the disaster's kind of sensationalized in pop culture and media and stuff like that. But then you kind of step back and say, no, these people, like, they were working at the power plant, they were living around the power plant. People, the old woman at the beginning of episode 4, she's sitting there milking her cow, and the soldiers are telling her, no, you have to evacuate. And she says, well, I've had soldiers tell me to leave before. I'm not leaving. I've lived here my whole life. And and it's presented in a way that she's not an idiot for not wanting to leave. She's just seen this before. But the soldiers are trying to do their job to save people. So it's like nobody is the bad guy really in this, other than the situation, which
Well,
there
are some bad guys.
There are some bad guys, but when you're talking about the people on the ground, the normal people, regular people, everyday people who were they had nothing to lives, just living their lives.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't say there aren't bad guys. There are bad guys in this.
Yeah,
but,
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
we should backtrack just a little.
Oh yeah, I know.
Before we get into like the miniseries itself, I guess for like us who we knew, like, you hear the name Chernobyl, and if you've taken any sort of like world history class, it's probably been glossed over, where it's like, oh, there's a nuclear power plant, it had an explosion, now there's this area that's completely abandoned, and that's kind of the end of it. That's what most of us know, as probably especially as Americans, where we tend to focus on our own history, let alone other countries. Obviously me, big nerd, scratching that itch, which is probably part of the same brain that also gets excited, like the people that get excited over like the true crime. Mm-hmm. It's probably that same part of the brain that gets lit up, like, ooh, this is exciting and entertaining. True crime, maybe not so much, but I do enjoy like history and don't take this the wrong way, but especially disasters. Again, I think it's that part of the same brain.
Well, disaster movies they're a genre unto themselves.
Exactly.
Titanic was one of the biggest movies of all time. So
that's true.
That tells you something about people's psyche.
Yeah.
But
spoilers, the boat sinks. So me being the big nerd, along with watching the series, listening to the podcast that went with it, and absorbing as many videos on YouTube as humanly possible in the time frame that I had. So I've done some research. Let's give a little history lesson beyond probably what you got in junior high world history. So the Chernobyl nuclear power plants, which is what most people refer to it, even though it actually isn't located in Chernobyl. The town of Chernobyl is in that area. The closest city actually was Pripyat, which was actually built at the same time as the power station was being built. So they built this city with the intention of, we're going to build this nuclear power plant. Obviously, people are going to need to run it and work at it. Let's just build this town, and then when it's up and running, the people that work there can just live right next to it, essentially.
Yeah.
They were like slightly over a mile from the plant.
I read one thing. It said like the Pripyat, they didn't even have a cemetery because all young families, young people who were starting their careers, and they were working at the power station.
Yeah, they were. It was supposed to be like this utopian type city where they had like really nice food markets and good schools, and their hospital was supposed to be top of the line. They were the population just boomed once everything, people moved in and started. They had 800 births a year. So it was just supposed to be this, picturesque community of people working and having, their families and kids playing out in the yard. And they were that year. Well, I don't know if it's every year, but apparently May 1st is an important date or something. At the time, this was the USSR.
Yeah. It's May Day. It's a big communist holiday.
It's like us having the 4th of July here in the United States, kind of. So they had this big celebration that was getting ready to happen on May 1st. So they were building like an amusement park with a Ferris wheel and all, bumper cars and all this fun stuff. What happened, or as best as we know what happened, is on early morning of April 26, 1986, the number 4 nuclear reactor, because at this point they had 4 reactors up and running. They were building 2 more, with one of them at 85% completion at that point, with plans to build 9 more. So they were gung ho with nuclear energy. This is the way to go. But it was the number 4 reactor exploded, essentially. And I'm not even going to try to explain the science behind it. Essentially, what it was is they were supposed to be running a safety test of all things. The irony is not lost on me at all. But they were supposed to be running this safety test that essentially to determine if power to the plant, which obviously it's a power plant, it's generating power, but all the computers and stuff need power. So if power to the plant suddenly got cut off, could they keep the turbines going long enough for the diesel generators to kick on without having a complete meltdown? So that's what they were testing. In the process of them doing this test, people made some very bad calculations. There was a combination of bad choices made, under-trained staff, people just wanting to get something done so they could write it off and be like, okay, this is done. Let's move on.
People looking for a promotion.
Yeah. So essentially what they did is they brought the power at the reactor down so far, and in the process of bringing the power down, it allowed essentially this chemical.
It was the xenon gas.
Yeah,
it built up.
This chemical mixture of gases and steam to build up without them realizing it, so that when they started the test and tried to power the reactor back up to full power, it slingshotted essentially. So it overcompensated and ended up bursting, is the layman's way, the TLDR way of doing it, explaining it. So, but it, because the reactor itself exploded, it released obviously all this radiation. The graphite that's used as kind of an insulator went all over the place. That in itself was dangerous. It was radioactive, but it was also hot. There were fires. So it was everything wrong. Everything that could go wrong went wrong, and it just, the domino effect, it just eventually, the reactor just, it could not do what it was intended to do, and it exploded.
Yeah.
But the problem is, with it being the USSR at the time, now obviously we've got Russia, Ukraine as its own country, all, you know, Belarus, they're all their own countries, but at the time they were all part of the USSR. The Russians, for lack of a better term, did not jump at like, oh my God, this terrible thing has happened, we must do everything we can to protect our citizens. And they did not bother to evacuate even just the town of Pripyat, let alone any of the other surrounding areas, for almost a couple days after the explosion. So all those people living there were exposed to high levels of radiation. They did not inform the rest of the nation state, let alone in the neighboring countries. It wasn't until the radiation in the air spread to countries like Germany and Sweden, and they started detecting it, the USSR was finally like, oh, yeah, we had an explosion. It's our bad.
Yeah, and you kind of get this sense even in the miniseries, like, because there is a moment where they have, I think it's Gorbachev is like looking at all the international coverage of things, and there's a clip of Peter Jennings, on ABC News talking about it, and you kind of, and I looked up that actual clip on YouTube just to kind of see it in its full context, see the whole report, and it's kind of funny, like the news they have this tone of, if they're actually admitting that if the Soviets are actually admitting something's wrong, then it is really, 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 really bad. And it is a lot. And somebody, my brother-in-law, we were talking, because, now we've got the coronavirus panic going on right now, which, that's a topic in and of itself. But he was mentioning something about how China was downplaying some of the numbers, but then some big bad numbers got out, and they think those are more real than that. And I just watched Chernobyl, and I was just like, this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it with these communist dictatorships and not wanting people to know that there's something bad going on? Yeah. But it was kind of ironic to me to hear that bit of news. But yeah, they talk about how, we don't want the people to be worried about something needlessly. In fact, one of the YouTube videos I watched was a guy who actually lived in Kiev, or he was from that area, and he remembered the May 1st, the parade on May 1st they were having. And somebody had said, we should cancel this. And we're like, no, everything's fine. We're going to take this parade, and people can get their minds off this terrible explosion, and everything's going to be fine. And a lot of people that he knew ended up getting sick and getting cancer because they were out during that time, and they were saying, nope, everything's all good. Just go about your lives, go to work, go to school,
no attention
do your
to the
stuff.
man behind the curtain.
It's like, there's no need to panic. And yeah, Lottie's telling everybody, panic. But I don't know. We could sit here and talk about the events and the history behind it, and it is fascinating history by now. And like you were saying, Rachel, if you didn't get this in junior high history class, I actually remember doing a report on Belarus in like 7th grade history, and I trying to remember if I even talked about Chernobyl in my report, if I learned anything about Chernobyl. Because this feels like it should be a bigger deal than it's been made out to be.
Yeah, considering the plant is like right there next to the border of Ukraine and Belarus. So,
yeah, and in the show, the scientist that Emily Watson plays, she's sort of a fictional composite character, but she was based in the Belarusian Institute for Nuclear Energy, and I was like, I did a report on that place. I didn't know anything about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, yeah, like you said, you get down this rabbit hole of learning about Chernobyl, and it's fascinating and it's sad. And
it's frustrating because it's like, every watching the series, there are some things that have been dramatized for the sake of drama. There have been some things that have been tweaked for as far as like the timeline is concerned, because they needed to fit this in 5 episodes, and actually like the trial and everything happened like a year later or several years later and lasted for like weeks, not just a day. So they had to condense some things and change things around, but for the most part, it is quite historically accurate. So and like a lot of the things that like Gorbachev and all these, these bureaucrats, these political people, said things, and they know that it was actually said because either someone in the room made sure to write things down and kept records after the fact, or as they were doing the cleanup, they were actually like recording it. Like there's video from the cleanup that they were actually documenting it, and stuff people said was caught on these videos. So it's every time there's some bureaucrat that's all like, oh, it's not that big a deal. I've heard it's like the equivalent of giving a chest x-ray, and I'm just like, palm in hand, like Picard, like really?
Yeah. I mean, it's
like they were so concerned, and like you were saying, Chrissy, it's like, what is it about these, these communist regimes? But their entire thing seems to be that it doesn't matter what actually happens. It's all about how the rest of the world perceives them. And as long as the rest of the world looks at them, in this case the Soviet Union, and be like, oh, well, they're powerful and have all this industry and everything, then they're happy. It doesn't matter that they've got 500,000 guys that have to go up on the roof for 90 seconds, clean off as much as possible, and then leave because they've literally gotten in the 90 seconds their lifetime dose of radiation and can never come back.
And all of that, the thing that gets me about the 90 seconds on the roof with the men, because earlier Jared Harris's character, Valery Legasov, he's saying, we cannot put people on the roof. We can't do this. We need to get, lunar rovers, robots, something else. So, they reach out, the government reaches out to West Germany, and they get a police robot, but they tell them, the radiation is only at 2,000. So once they get the police robot on the roof, this is a lot of cost of expense and time. And they put the robot on the roof, and it just fries immediately because the actual number is 12,000 of radiation. And then
that's what they built the robot for. They're like, it's 2,000? We built a robot for 2,000.
Yeah, we've got this one. Here, use it. But no, the robot dies in like seconds because it's too much radiation. And then you get that, you get that amazing scene with Sherbina, Stellan Skarsgård's character. He goes in that hut and he just screams into the phone like, I don't care who's listening. You tell everybody, blah blah blah, FFF. I mean, it's this is rated MA. He lets them have it, and they deserve it. They deserve it. And then he walks out and says, this is what happened. By the way, you need a new phone. Which is, going back to the writing, I'm like, and the acting, I just feel like, because Boris Sherbina, he was, he at the first, he was one of those, we're fine, it's a chest x-ray, no big deal. But by the end of it, by the end of the series and the things that he's seen and what he does to help, fix the problem, he's right there with them. He's saying, like, you guys, you government bureaucrats, you know, the obedient fools, you guys all suck. It's like, why don't you listen to what these people are telling you about the danger? And you know, and he's the guy who gets stuff done in the end, and that's what Legasov even tells him at the very end during that break in the trial that they have, and it's like, you know, Boris, you actually did matter because you're the one who got everything we needed, and you weren't just one of the party guys towing the line and saying we're all fine here now, everything's okay, no need to worry.
Accidentally sent the good guy.
Yeah, they actually sent the one good man who could make an impact.
Well, at the beginning, he did seem like a hardline party guy. Like when when they're flying in on the helicopter, and he's like, "Tell me everything you know about how a nuclear reactor works," and he's like, and then he explains it to him as best as possible. He's like, "Okay, now I have no need for you. I'm going to have you shot."
Yeah. And he's like,
once he actually gets there and actually
the open reactor core. What?
Yeah. But once he's actually there and actually sees it and experiences it for himself, he can't deny it. It's a lot easier to, deny it when Gorbachev and his minions are in a lead-lined bunker somewhere, not actually seeing what's happening. All they're getting are occasional photos and maps drawn for them.
Or the
graphs with a bunch of numbers that they don't really understand, because some of these people that worked at this plant or worked on this council had no experience with nuclear physics and any of that.
Well, and another thing I read is so the guy at the power plant, Brekhanov, the guy who was kind of got the bouffant hair, he actually, well, in real life, he didn't really know anything. He wasn't a nuclear anything. He just helped. He was a construction guy. He worked on the power plant, and when they finished it on time, he got promoted to be like the guy in charge of the whole thing. So even though he knows nothing about nuclear energy or nuclear science, he knew how to move up the food chain, as it were. So when Sherbina and Legasov get to the site right off, there's Brekhanov and Fomin, and Brekhanov is like, "Oh yeah, everything's fine. By the way, here's a list of people that we think are, who are actually responsible for this." And their inclination isn't, "Okay, this is a problem, we need to fix it." Is, "Here's who we need to blame, so we don't get it." And then I just love how Sherbina just kind of sees through all that bull crap, because because they're like, "Oh no, that's not graphite, that's burnt concrete." And Sherbina's like, "Nah, I know what concrete looks like. That concrete ain't burnt. It's graphite."
Yeah.
And he takes everything that Legasov, who is a scientist who doesn't know how to cut through all the bureaucratic nonsense, but he takes what he learns from Legasov and he just gets through all of it. And it's, if that happened in real life, holy cow, that it probably did happen that way. Maybe not exactly like you said. It's as dramatized, but man, I have so much respect for that man, and not just because he's played by Stellan Skarsgård, but in real life, just the fact that he could get things done, and he actually cared about something other than his political career, which might not have been the case always, because he even says several times, like, "I'm a career party man. I'm a guy," because Legasov is frustrated with all the political red tape that he has to get through just to say, "Look, these people are in danger. We have to clean it up. It's going to contaminate our food, our water, our air. We could have another explosion potentially."
Yeah.
It's just
Well, Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, the cast on this. There's a number. A good chunk of the cast is people that I don't know, but I know Stellan Skarsgård best from either the Pirates of the Caribbean movies or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Stellan actually, I don't know how much this played into his portrayal of Sherbina or not, But Stellan Skarsgård is Swedish, and he actually experienced some of the effects of the Chernobyl accident in the 80s and 90s, and he remembers them like putting like import export restrictions on things, and because of stuff being radioactive. And actually even now there are some things like mushrooms, reindeer meat, and wild boar that still have to be screened for cesium contamination, and occasionally is declared unfit for sale and human consumption.
Oof.
Yeah. So it's things like that scene with the soldier and the old woman milking her cow, the babushka, that, it seems kind of harsh, that he dumps out her bucket of milk that she spent this time, milking this cow to get, and then shooting her cow. Seems harsh, but it actually scientifically was actually the smartest thing he could have done, because milk is actually one of the most significant pathways that cause people to get afflicted by radiation. Iodine 131, which can lead to an increase of thyroid cancer, apparently can be propagated quite easily in dairy. Is because after the accident, the pastures were affected by iodine, cesium, and strontium. The cows would eat the grass, which grass actually has a large surface area compared to its weight. So those of us that think grass is just, something that looks nice on your lawn. So the cows would eat the grass. That would get concentrated in their bodies and then contaminate the milk. And even now, at least as of 2018, there's still some cows that produce milk that is more radioactive than is regulation allows.
So yeah, I mean that the woman, even if she had drank the milk, just living there that's why they're trying to evacuate her.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like that entire area, the exclusion zone, it still exists. It's still fenced off. People can go there. I mean, they're still working on the cleanup effort even now.
Yeah,
the cleanup is actually not expected to be finished until 2065.
Well, they just built a new containment thing that was built in like 2017, and look up videos on how that thing was built, because I'm like,
it was built by the French.
But it had to be built off-site and then rolled over the building.
Yeah, well, they built it in two pieces, had to put those two pieces together, which is really cool, because they do that with some cruise ships, actually, where they will build it in two halves and then bring it together in the middle and then putting it apart. But yeah, because this was to replace the original confinement that they built within a matter of months after the accident, which was pretty much all concrete. That they called it the sarcophagus.
Yeah, and it was falling apart, and radiation was leaking out, and it was like, we got to fix this.
Yeah, so they ended up getting a French company, got the contract to come up with this new confinement for it. It's 3 times the weight of the Eiffel Tower, longer than 2 jumbo jets, held together by 500,000 specialty bolts. The roofing and cladding are the equivalent of 12 football pitches, and there's a membrane inside that hermetically seals that confinement to the existing structure, so that they can keep the inside dry, which is one of the most important things, because that helps with dust production, and it also traps stuff in and then keeps stuff from getting out.
Yeah, and eventually it's supposed to be so they're going to start dismantling the core, the rest of the building within that containment structure. And I assume I assume it's going to have to be done like with drones or robots or something, because nobody can actually go inside there. And
Yeah.
They're like you can go in the general area without a lot of protection and be fine, because the air itself is low enough. Registered on a diamometer. I just want to call it a Geiger counter. So I think it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, I don't. Some of these terms I'm not familiar with. Like, there's the dosimeter that measures how much is in the air, but then there's also I think the Geiger counter is more, if it starts clicking a lot, it's like, you better get out of here. There's a lot of radiation. Yeah. Rontgen is the measurement of how much radiation is around.
Yeah, but like, certain parts of the exclusion area, the amount of radiation just in the air is equivalent to like going into any other major city where there's, all sorts of technology and all sorts of things. It's you don't want to touch anything because of the dust. You don't want to eat anything or drink anything, because that's where the real contamination is, and that's why nobody technically is allowed to live there anymore. But there's, in a couple of spots, like a couple hundred people that have moved back into like these small villages that the Russian government and the Ukrainian government are just kind of like, okay, you live there, we're just not going to acknowledge it, you live there.
We'll turn a blind eye.
We'll turn a blind eye. You've got electricity because, there's soldiers and stuff there that have to man like the entrances and stuff. So they still have like utilities because of the people there working on the cleanup and the soldiers that are manning the area. But yeah, there's a small group, and it's mostly senior citizens. People in their 70s and 80s that they're like, I'm this old. If I'm going to die from radiation poisoning, I'm this old anyway. I'd rather die on my motherland, the place where I lived, where I raised children, that sort of thing. Like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die here.
Yeah. And there's people that will do like guided tours through the exclusion zone, but they have to be like licensed, and you can only stay there so long. And like you said, you can't touch anything.
Scan you on your way in and scan you on your way out.
And you'll find YouTube videos of people who visited, and they talk to the tour guides. And one thing that I think that I found fascinating was there's probably several of these, but there's like a huge vehicle graveyard, for lack of a better term, of all these trucks and helicopters and equipment that they use in the cleanup that has to stay there because it's all because metal absorbs radiation so much. That's why the graphite that was in the debris after the explosion was so radioactive. So like the cars, the trucks, all that, even the buses that carried people out were just abandoned. And you see some of that in episode 5 when Legasov's going to the trial, because they have the trial in the town of Chernobyl at the end of the series, and you see him going by all these vehicles that are just unusable now because they're so radioactive. No one can touch them. No one can even get close to them. Yeah. And one video I watched, someone just had a Geiger counter up next to a bicycle that was just left in a field or on a lawn somewhere, and the Geiger counter just spiked immediately because of all that radiation that the bike had absorbed over the years. So anyway, it's kind of the science behind it is really fascinating. It could be hard to understand, but I do love how the series explains it, like, as much as you need to know. So it's like like when you write a series like this, your audience is not going to be nuclear scientists, nuclear physicists. We're not, the regular person is just not going to understand how this stuff works, but you have to explain it in order for people to understand what the disaster is, how it happened, and why it's going to affect people the way it is. Because, radiation is something like they say it in the show. You can't see it. You don't know it's there. How can something that I can't see hurt me?
Yeah.
But
the only indication you can kind of get is you will get a metallic taste in your mouth.
Yeah, because
kind of like if you've ever tasted blood and you can taste like iron.
Yeah. In the first episode, people are asking each other, "Can you taste metal?" and all this stuff. But yeah, so they do a really good job of explaining this is how it works, and this is why it exploded. And that's also like kind of part of the mystery too, because part of the problem with the explosion is they thought that this reactor was safe. Like it had a fail safe. If there was ever a problem, you hit the red button, you shut it down, and we're done. But and in fact, it had this flaw that if it got to a certain point, you hit the button, it would actually explode. But they didn't know that because again, it was a state secret because everything is run by the government, by the bureaucracy. So any kind of flaw that they don't want people to know about, we're just going to cover that up and hope it never becomes important. And in the show, in the series, Ulana Homiuk, the woman that Emily Watson plays, she's the one looking for trying to figure out what happened, interviewing the men who are working in the control room while they're still alive, doing research on the thing. And she almost doesn't find out, except for this one little bit that didn't get redacted in the records, is that and it basically explains that what happened, and then she brings their findings to Legasov, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't think," and he knew about it, and he actually had a hand in covering it up. And in the show, he goes, "Oh, I didn't realize that's what it was. That's what caused the explosion," until Humiuk brought up all this evidence that she'd unearthed, and she tells him, "You've got to bring this up at the trial. You got to tell people, because if they don't get these fixed, we're going to have another explosion on our hands somewhere in the country, somewhere in the Soviet Union." And after, and this is after so many months of them cleaning up and so many deaths, so many people who've gotten sick, who've had to be evacuated. It's like all this trouble because they didn't fix a problem when they found it. It's like, well, let's avoid it again, but they still are like, no, we don't need to fix anything.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you kind of do.
Yeah. Yeah. And they do, I think, a good job of, I don't want to say dumbing down the science, but I guess laymaning.
Yeah.
The science, because we get that bit with Jared Harris's character during the trial, which that did not actually happen. He and Boris were not there for that, but this kind of gives them their opportunity for him to explain, now that they've got all this evidence, they've got a timeline, that he's using like these cards on this wall thing to explain, both with science, because there are other scientists there in the audience of the trial, but also for like the judge and the people who aren't scientists, try to explain that, if you do this, the reactor is supposed to do this so that it keeps everything in balance. It's all about balance, the balance between the steam and the nuclear fission that's happening. And, as long as they keep everything in balance, it's fine. But the problem is it got imbalanced and then it ricocheted and literally exploded.
And one part I really like in that scene is where, he's saying, the balance between the steam and the temperature and the water and all these things. And he has this little moment where he says, and it's beautiful when things are normal. And you'd kind of think, would someone use this series as like a beating stick against, nuclear power or something? And this guy's a nuclear physicist, so it kind of makes sense that he would find it, beautiful and interesting and cool and all those things. Because when you're a scientist and you're working with this stuff, or you're working with a field that you're interested in, and it actually works, I don't know. I just kind of feel like there would be a moment of, hey, I know how this works, and you have a moment of pride and awe in the fact of seeing something like this. So it's like, well, I'm not there. It's like they're not saying that nuclear power itself is bad. They're just saying that the corruption and the hiding things, the lies, the cover up, when there was a problem, that's when you run into a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That you run into trouble, and that's when people get hurt.
Yeah.
And
they do, for as much as scientific explanation we get throughout the series, what really I think sends the point home is not just them telling us
mm-hmm.
What happened to cause the explosion and what happens when people are exposed to radiation, but actually showing us.
Yeah.
And that's the really hard, as fascinating as this is, that's the hard part, is seeing the actual physical and mental ramifications of this, from the depiction of the actual explosion, which we don't actually see that until the last episode. All we get explosion wise is the explosion off at a distance through a window at the very beginning. So, but then when we go through the timeline of what happened that day, going into that evening, and then we get the actual explosion, and it's just, obviously something like this could not be really depicted realistically until, computer graphics and stuff could do that. But then the explosion itself is like, it's like something out of a disaster movie.
Pretty much.
But it's what happens to the people from the control room, the other people working at the plant, seeing what happens to people when they are exposed to radiation is just, it's horrific. From people, like, you can see the people that are closest, like the firefighters or first responders, where the skin on their face and hands that's exposed to the air just slowly turns red, like they're getting a sunburn, to the guys that Elena interviews. And one of them we see as she's interviewing him, and he's just, it's absolutely horrific. And then the other guy, they don't even bother to show him, but she tells Jared Harris's character, when she sees him, he's like, his face was gone.
Yeah. And I read a comment somewhere that they said, like, this is HBO. They don't shy away from the gory, scary stuff, but when it's even too much for HBO to show.
Yeah, because they were going to show way more and way worse between the people and that were exposed to radiation and what happens physically to them, and also the bit that actually caught me, I think, more, when the liquidators, the guys have to go and to do quote unquote animal control, that was actually going to be way more extreme than what they showed in HBO. Is like, no, this is too much even for us. And this is the network that gives us Game of Thrones. This is the same people who gave us the Red Wedding.
Yeah.
But there were bits in Chernobyl that were like, no, this is too extreme even for us.
Yeah.
So.
And I another video that I put on the list, well, there was two videos I want to just mention here. One was the guy who worked on the prosthetics, who there's an interview with him where he's talking about, like, what kind of research he did to find out, like, what does it look like when someone is it advanced stages of radiation sickness? What does that look like? And what can we do with the prosthetics? And he said there was very little information that he could find. There were some photographs, but they weren't great. There were some descriptions that he could work from. And so he just kind of, used those and did the best he could, which I think, as horrific as it was, I mean, the one man, Toptanoff, that Ilana interviews, that you see his face and everything. He's only, it says he's only 25. He's in the control room, and he looks like so much older after the radiation, and so much worse.
Well, like I said, like he explains it.
Yeah,
like,
he does.
In kind of layman's terms what happens.
Yeah.
And essentially is like the skin turns red, and like you may get nosebleeds and all sort of vomiting and that sort of thing as the body initially absorbs the radiation, and then you kind of got this period where you almost seem to get better. But what that is the body kind of completing the absorption and now going through, its processes internally, and then starts destroying you internally. So essentially you become mush internally. It eats you from the inside out.
Yeah, the book I checked out, there was the one of the accounts, it says the body bags that they were taken from the hospital were basically full of soup.
Yeah.
And a skeleton.
Yeah.
And it was gross. Like it is. But it's but you are conscious, you are lucid through this whole thing because your brain doesn't degrade. And that was one of the things that in the other video there was that I was going to talk about, the Chernobyl the woman who is a doctor who worked with patients from Chernobyl, and they had her, a Vanity Fair interviewed her, like, what did the series get right, what did they get wrong? And there's a lot they got right. There was one thing she's like, well radiation victims don't really look like that, but she's like, but they were kind of close. But it's just, I kind of chalked that up to, well, they didn't have a lot of information to work from, and what they did have, they did the best they could. And I mean, what they got was horrendous enough. And it's not just like, the body horror. It's, that Ludmilla is, she's there with her husband, Vasily, and she's just there with him all the time. She doesn't want him to die alone. She doesn't want him to be alone through all this. And you can tell, like, their relationship is just really strong at the beginning of the series before he leaves to go fight the fire, or what he thinks is just a fire. Poor guy. And it's just like their story, I think, is the one that is the real kick in the gut for me, because they're just a couple, a young couple. He's got a really good job. They live in this, like you said, Pripyat was one of the best places that they could work and live. That's what it was meant for, and they were living really good life. In fact, at the beginning of the episode 5, they have a little flashback to a few hours before the explosion, and you see these characters, these people that we've watched for 4 episodes through this disaster, through this tragedy, and they're just having their life. They're just doing their thing. They're not bothering anybody. They're just working and being with friends, being with their family. And Vasily and Ludmilla were going to have a family. She was going to have a baby, and they were just looking forward to whatever good things in life were going to come to them, and that all got put to a very quick halt because of this. And it's just, and that's why I like the way this is structured. Because as a writer, and in my writer brain, I'm just thinking, man, that was a really good way to kind of drive home this whole thing, and to wait till the end for us to see them all in their quote unquote normal lives before the explosion, before the disaster happened, because we're like, oh no, we've already seen what's going to happen to you guys, and I'm really sorry. But it gets us that connection to these people, to these characters that we've, well, I mean, not they're not characters as such. They're real life people who actually lived through all this. But yeah, it's an interesting way to do it, and it's very effective from a writer's standpoint. But oof. It's just, I don't know. It's odd to say that I'm like, I've watched this a couple times now, and normally something like a big disaster show, movie thing like this, I wouldn't watch more than once probably. But I just keep going back to it just because of the writing, and because of the acting is compelling. The music, it doesn't really sound like traditional music, but it fits for the subject matter.
Yeah. Well, it's not for. Yeah. I mean, we do get occasional like music, like somebody listening to the radio, or there's a couple of scenes where, like when they're burying Ludmilla's husband along with some others, like the first ones to be kind of buried. So the first casualties, and they're putting them in these lead-lined caskets and then putting them all in this mass grave and then covering it in concrete, and they're playing like this hymn. But yeah, for the most part, there's not really like traditional music. And the composer for this, Hildur, who just won the Oscar for Joker, that apparently she went to the power plant that they use actually for filming in Lithuania, and recorded a lot of the ambient sound that was created by the facility, and then they would use that. She would use that and mix it into the score for the series. So, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't. I don't know. I know very little about creating music. I just know what I like, but I wouldn't think to do something like that. But it, like I said, it fits for this.
It's what it sounds like, especially during like the closing credits of each episode, and you just kind of listen to it and you're like, well, it's not really music. It just sounds like creaking and all sorts of things. But now that I know that's what she did, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I totally see that.
And it just kind of leaves you with that, because music, if she had a big orchestra or something, it would kind of be a little too bombastic, a little too melodramatic maybe, but just that you have this creeping industrial sound to leave an episode on. It works. It works, like especially some of the episodes where the episode 2 especially is the one where the divers are, their lights go out and their Geiger counters are going crazy, and they're in the dark and they're trying to get to the pumps to drain the water, and that's the cliffhanger. That's the end of the episode, and you're just like, it just kind of adds to your shock as we're sitting there with the credits rolling, and you hear that sound, and you're just like, are these guys gonna live? What's gonna happen to them? I don't know. But they got to get to the water, otherwise you're going to have an even bigger problem, which, in your mind, you're like, well, I'm pretty sure that explosion that they were trying to avoid, pretty sure that didn't happen. So hopefully they succeeded. I think they did. But I still need to know. But it's what those cliffhangers that they leave off on in the music.
Scene was so creepy too. Like, it was like something you expect from like a horror movie. You expect like a monster to come up, but no, this was whoa. Actually, that did happen.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tone that they're going for. Is like it's a historical thriller horror movie, and the monster is the radiation, and you don't see it, but it's still gonna get you. But at the same time, it's not a traditional. I don't know. I guess, you call this a historical or a period piece, but even that seems, trying to call this a certain genre. It's like, what do you even call this?
Well, like in the interviews, they kept on like each episode had like a different kind of genre to it. Like, like the last one's episode 5 was like more courtroom drama.
Yeah, that is true, because but it's intercut with a disaster movie, because it's leading up to the explosion, and this is how the explosion happened, and so you have the flashbacks of the guy, the power plant workers coming into work, and here's this guy that you met back in episode 3 on a hospital bed dying of radiation. This is how this was his day at work, or here are these guys who are on trial. They're the ones bossing everybody around and ignoring the warnings and the people saying like, there is no core. The core exploded. I'm saying, oh no, it didn't. It's still there. It was a fuel tank or a water tank that exploded or something. And you go up on the roof and go tell me that the core is still there. And he's like, not going.
Yeah.
And even before he goes in, was it Sitnikov? I felt so bad for him because he was one of the day shift guys that got pulled in to come fix the problem. And he goes in and it's like, so our dosimeters are going off the charts, so there's something really wrong. Like, we'll go see if there's a core left. No, and they force him to do it anyway. And I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry, dude. You were one of the few smart ones, or at least, well, of course you're a smart one. You're working at the power plant, but you actually know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really like this. I love this series. It was just so well done, and it's just intriguing and fascinating, and like I just kind of it's the writing on it just works. And when there's something that's this well written, I just want to kind of sit and bask in it because I'm like, you did such a great job. Then I find out that the guy who created it and wrote it wrote The Hangover.
Yeah.
Or Hangover Part 2. One of those, those frat boy goofy comedy movies.
Yeah, like his IMDb is like he did like Scary Movie 3 and The Hangover Part 2.
Wow.
Like movies like that, and then there's Chernobyl, and I'm like, yeah, I would never have pegged you as this, but it seems like everybody has that one amazing thing in him, and this was his. I mean, I hope it's not just one. If he's this good at doing this kind of thing, it's like, do another one, man. Don't just. But yeah, don't pigeonhole people into just doing one certain thing, because this one was amazing.
And I highly, highly recommend listening to the podcast.
Same.
Especially, like, I'd watch an episode and then I'd listen to the podcast of the episode that goes with that. And I thought it was a really good way to kind of consume this, because there's only 5 episodes of each. So
it's like they knew that people who were watching this would like want to know more about the history of it. Like, well, did it really happen that way? Where can I go to learn more about this? And I mean, like we said, this is not a topic that a lot of people know about. And even over in Russia, so there's some people over here who hate this because it makes
them look bad.
Makes them look bad, and I'm like, you kind of deserve it.
Yeah.
Because then you go and you look up the history of it, you look up what happened, the actual records of the things and things that have come out since then, or lack thereof. Well, I mean, Legasov, the real Valery Legasov, I mean, God bless him. He had to commit suicide just so the truth could get out, because he recorded his account of what happened, and they circulated after he died. They circulated that account until the government could no longer ignore it, and they said, okay, fine, we'll fix these, and potentially saving millions and millions of lives. So as tragic as his story ends up being, there is some good that came of it. And I mean, and even though he, in the last episode, the KGB guy who comes in is like, well, you were one of us, you did all these things, you're this, you're that, so why are you doing this now? And it's just, he's like, I'm just sick of the lies. I'm sick of covering things up. I'm sick of not, the bureaucracy, the big government over, people's lives. And I'm not doing this anymore. I mean, he's dying at that point, of course, but shoot, I mean, whatever else he did in his life, I think he more than made up for it with his efforts to prevent another Chernobyl.
Yeah.
But just all these people. I mean, they're just people. They're flawed human beings, but in the end, they did what they had to do, and it ended up being a good thing. for the most part. But yeah, it's just it's.
Oh, you have anything else specific you want to bring up? I've got like facts and stuff that we can.
Yeah,
over,
I'm just let's see. I think I went over most of the YouTube videos that I recommended. The last 3 I have on the list are just basically reviews, but they're really good reviews. The first one I put up is a critical drinker. I'm gonna say this about his channel. It is he's kind of down on a lot of things. It's kind of his shtick. So when he reviews something and actually says I recommend this, it's kind of a break in character for him, and it kind of makes you sit up and pay attention, which that was one that I was like, okay, maybe there is something to this Chernobyl thing. And then there are a couple other reviews that I watched. Jeremy Johns, he mostly does movies, but he reviewed this too and said it was, he gushed about it. So I'm like, and it was pretty good. So yeah, so if you're wondering where to start after you watch Chernobyl and want to know more, there's some YouTube videos, the podcast we recommend for sure. But yeah, there's a ton of information on Chernobyl. Some of the videos are well done than others. Some are kind of boring. So just kind of pick and choose your poison. Yeah. No, I didn't mean that pun. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. But a lot of the ones that you have that we'll put in the show notes are ones that I've watched. So, but I think there's a few more like documentary type ones that are like not necessarily about the miniseries, but about the actual event.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. So
yeah.
And if you could find the Top Gear video of them driving through Chernobyl, that one's kind of chilling. I can only find about half of it, but it's there.
Yeah, and I think it was like Ghost Hunters or Monster Hunters or one of those that they've also been there.
Yeah.
But we'll wrap this up with some more facts, I guess, both about the disaster itself and the series. This is considered the worst nuclear disaster in history. There is a scale, a severity scale by the International Nuclear, it's called the International Nuclear Event Scale, and the highest it goes is 7, and Chernobyl, and then the Fukushima disaster in Japan that happened in 2011 is the other one that's listed at a 7. The other reactors, the 3 other reactors, 1, 2, and 3, actually remained operational after the explosion until the year 2000.
Oof.
Which is crazy when you think about that. Like,
yes.
People still went to work over
electricity.
Well, that is true. That is true. I've just been like, if I had to go work there every day, I'd be like, I don't know.
I better be. Well, it was Russia, so maybe not. But if I was here, I'd be expecting some major benefits.
Yeah, really.
Oh boy.
The 3 guys that were put on trial, were all sentenced to 10 years in prison because they had to have a scapegoat. But they were all released when the Soviet Union fell, and then there was a blanket general amnesty that went out for all sorts of, I guess, political prisoners. So I guess that's good that because it would have been like 10 years being the Soviet Union. It's not just 10 years in prison; it's 10 years like hard labor. So that would not have been very good. As far as as we were saying, as far as the records or lack thereof, there's no there's no way to know for sure exactly how many people died and have been affected because of this disaster. because in 1988, so 2 years after, there was a decree from the Kremlin to prevent doctors from citing radiation as a cause for death or illness. Yeah.
Again, they, everything's fine here.
The official record of like deaths is like 31.
Yeah.
And officially, the liquidators of like the 500,000 men that they, essentially drafted to be part of the cleanup. Officially, the deaths from those is like less than 100, but really it's estimated that it was probably like 50,000 of those liquidators died in short term because of exposure from the cleanup. Obviously, long term, it's a little harder to tell, but the ones that died within a short time frame, they suspected the number is significantly higher than that. So the dispatch calls that we hear in Russian and Ukrainian, the equivalent of 911 calls, those are the actual calls from people calling the fire department, essentially. Some of the scientific stuff, the facts and trivia on IMDb, they get into some of the explanation of some of the science, like when they talk about the air glowing, and Dyatlov dismisses it as the Cherenkov effect. That is effect that electromagnetic radiation emits when a charged particle passes through a medium at a speed greater than the essentially speed of light. You actually will see that glow in water in nuclear reactors, but in this case, that was not what was happening. So it was lots of radiation. When Alana makes that phone call in the second episode, where if you weren't paying attention, you'd be like, "What? There's like a disaster happening. Why are they talking about family visiting?" They're actually speaking in code because they both understand. They're both scientists, so they have enough scientific knowledge that they knew they could speak in a way that they could get what they need to say across in case the phones are being wiretapped, which odds are they probably were. So like when they're talking about it's so hot here right now, yes, it's extremely hot. Hot is a physicist jargon for radiation of high intensity. When they're talking about the nephews coming to visit, Sinka, who is 14, little Boris, who's 5. Sinka is silicone, which is element 14, which is found in sand. And then Boris is actually boron, which is element 5. So, the firefighters' clothing that gets stripped and dumped in the basement at the hospital is still there. It's now covered under a bunch of sand, and it's one of the most radioactive places in the city. But they the firefighter uniforms, they just left them in the basement, and they're still there.
Don't blame them.
Yeah.
And there are videos of people visiting that place and like, we're gonna go down the basement and see the firefighters' clothes, and we're only gonna stay here for a few minutes. I'm like, but they go and their Geiger counters spike, and it's like, okay, you're done, get out of there.
Yeah. The 3 workers that they sent down to drain the water, that they all expected, they thought maybe would die very quickly from the radiation exposure. As of the series coming out, actually 2 of them are still alive, and the other one died of a heart attack.
Wow.
Not of cancer or anything. So, and he lived until 2005.
Yeah.
So, which that whole thing of them going down to drain that water, because at this point they think that there's a chance for another explosion if that water reaches essentially a boiling point. While that actually happened, having to send those 3 guys down, there actually was not risk of any other explosions because of that water, but they just did not know that at that time, and they were uber paranoid. So they sent those 3 guys down there, essentially risking their lives for something that probably would not have happened, but they did not know that at the time.
Well, better to send them down there and avoid it and not have the explosion than to think, oh, well, maybe it's okay, and then it turns out that it exploded anyway.
That's true. That is very, very true.
I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah. The helicopter crash did actually occur, but it did not. It occurred several months later. But the way that they shot it is very, very similar to how the helicopter crash actually occurred, because it was caught on video.
Yeah, I watched that video, like, cause I was curious.
Yeah.
I saw that, like, oh, cool. Cool is wrong word, but it's also, like, I don't know how to...
I mean, it's kind of cool that they're able to recreate stuff like that with special effects these days.
It's more of a you recreated something from history. It's not cool that it happened, but you made it happen for your story.
Yeah. It was really good.
This is really hard to talk about.
It is.
Because we admire them for making this, for the craft, for the care that they put into it. We're not happy that the event itself happened, because ouch.
It's always hard. Like, I try to think, like, I love history. I love learning about history, but a lot of stuff that I like that interests me are, like, the horrible stuff. And, like, I don't want to say interests me, because that sounds wrong, but I don't know how else to.
Well, here this is it. It's like, nobody, you're not going to see an entry in a history book that says day, random day with a random date. Nothing happened today.
True.
So, the king ate his oatmeal or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff's not going to make it into the history books.
Got up, showered, went to work, went to the gym, ate dinner, walked the dog, went to bed.
Yeah. It's the interesting things are the ones that are a little out of the ordinary, and more often than not, stuff that's out of the ordinary is bad stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
When they're talking about compensating, either giving bonuses, to like the guys who went to drain the water, and then when they hire the miners and stuff. In 1986, the average salary in the Soviet Union was 120 rubles per month. So when they talk about giving people like an 800 ruble bonus or whatever, that's a lot, compared to the monthly salary. That's like, it's like half a year's worth of salary right there. That being said, in today's exchange rates, and I can't speak for 1986 exchange rates, but in today's exchange rate, that 800 rubles in US dollars would be slightly under $12, 12 US dollars.
The average Soviet household, the average income is poor.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you were a high government official, you got the better stuff. You got the the nice place to live, the money, the food, the stuff. But everybody else, you got nothing.
Yeah.
You worked, and that's what you did.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on Soviet anything. Anyway, continue. Continue. This is neither the time nor the place.
Yes.
I have acquaintances who used to live there, and in that time, and they do not have anything nice to say. Thus, I have nothing nice to say about that economy there. Anyway, as you were.
Going back to the music, speaking of the music in the last scene of episode 4 is actually not music that was written for the show by Hilder. It's actually a piece that it is her music, but it was a piece of music that already appeared on one of her albums. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce either the name of the track or the album. But there's a Chernobyl version on the soundtrack for the series. So all the music was still hers. It's just one piece happened to be one that she'd already written and recorded and released. That's about it. We actually covered most of everything else actually throughout our conversation. So
yeah. But so if you have not watched Chernobyl, or if I highly recommend it. Do keep in mind it's HBO. It's rated TVMA. There's some, and mostly just for disturbing images. There's some language, so just be aware of that. But if you're into history,
there's some nudity.
Oh yeah, and nudity.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It is kind of funny though. It's like, I mean, we're just trugging along. It's like at this point we've seen people with their skin peeling off from radiation and vomiting and all sorts of things. And then there's these miners that they did do this in real life, that it got so hot them digging this tunnel and they could not have fans because of fear kicking up the radioactive particles, that they did strip down to their nothings.
Yep.
But you get a shot of that.
Yeah. And the great thing about that is the head miner. I think he might have been a composite character for the series. Done with all the bureaucracy and the crap and everything. And the thing about the miners is the Soviet Union depended so much on coal that the miners could demand anything they wanted, and they would usually get it. So the miners have this different kind of attitude about all of it. And so the chief supervisor guy who's there, he's one of my favorite characters in the whole thing, because he is just not putting up with anybody's crap. And he'll call you out, with Legasov and Sherbina, he's like, the masks, and they have like, if these masks work, you'd be wearing them. But his first priority is always to the men that he's over, and he asks them point blank, like, are these men going to be taken care of? Because they're working in a very dangerous place. And Sherbina, like, he's the one who tells Legasov, like, don't lie to these guys. They can see right through it. Mm-hmm. And he just says, I don't know if they're going to be taken care of. And it feels like he respects that answer, because it's not often that an apparatchik is going to actually give you a straight answer. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the miners, they're great. And I mean, there's not a lot of actual levity or a lot of jokes in this show, but there are a few moments of a little bit of lightheartedness just to release the tension a bit, and that's part of it.
Yeah. And another scene I like with the miners is when they're first getting recruited, and then like they start like patting that official looking guy.
They got the bureaucrat, and it's like you're like the head of like the coal.
Yeah, he's the minister
energy.
Of coal.
Yeah, minister of coal, and he's wearing like this nice suit, and they all go by and smack him on the shoulder with their coal covered hands and just get him filthy.
And the one guy comes up and says, "Now you look like the minister of coal."
Yes.
It's like, those little lighthearted moments. I'm like, yeah, we need that. I mean, don't make it the comedy yuck hour, but give it a little breathing room, which they do. There's a good balance there, so it helps. But anyway, so yeah, if you've seen this, or if you want to see it, or if you have any thoughts about it. Hi, Charlotte. I don't know if you heard that. She just let out a noise. Anyway,
she's excited.
If you have any feedback about Chernobyl if you've seen it, or if you have any historical insight or anything you want to share, let us know. Our email to send feedback is 5ishfangirls@gmail.com. You can also get in touch with us through our website, which is the5ishfangirls.com. You can get to our social media links through there. Facebook's kind of our main one. We also have Instagram and YouTube. You can download our podcasts through Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio. We're on Spotify and a bunch of other places. So wherever you get podcasts, we're there. Also support us if you can through Patreon. Our Amazon store is also linked to on our website, as is our Redbubble store. You can get merchandise there and other things that will help support us. And thank you again for all your support, for your comments, for your feedback, for whatever, if you're a Patreon supporter, whatever you do to help support the podcast, even just listening, leaving reviews, it's great, and we thank you for it as always. So hope you guys are doing well. And somebody is sounding a little grouchy.
Somebody's like, okay, Mom, wrap this thing up.
Yeah, that's the cue there.
Yeah.
I put her down in her pack and play for a minute, so that's why she's like, don't put me down. You have to hold me all the time. I must be held.
Yes. All right. Well, with that, I guess we shall sign off for this week.
This is Brittany and Bethlehem saying goodnight.
This is Chrissy saying goodnight from Salt Lake City.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Kind of related, is watching this. It's like, I know Stellan Skarsgård, and I know Jared Harris from a few things. He's in the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, plays Moriarty. But for some reason, like, his look and the way he talks just really struck a chord with me, and I could not figure out why until I looked him up and realized that his father was Richard Harris, the OG Dumbledore.
I was going to bring that up, but yes, he does. He looks and acts a lot like his dad.
Yes, I'm like, that's where I'm getting it from. Thank you, Internet.
Another quick one. Sam Troughton played Akimov, who was the other guy in the control room with the glasses. Mm-hmm. And that is Patrick Troughton's son as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of this cast, even if you don't necessarily recognize them, there's a lot of Game of Thrones and Harry Potter people in this. Mm-hmm. So have fun playing Spot, the one of 12 British actors.
You have been listening to the 5ish Fangirls podcast. You can find more episodes and information at the5ishfangirls.com. Any and all books, movies, games, and any other forms of media mentioned are owned and operated by the respective copyright holders. No copyright infringement is intended or implied. If you wish to support the show, the easiest way is to leave us a rating and review. More ratings and reviews will make it easier for others to find the show. If you wish to support us monetarily, you can do so at patreon.com/5ishfangirlspodcast. All money goes towards fees and equipment to keep the show going. For official 5ish Fangirls merchandise, visit redbubble.com/people/5ishfangirls. We love hearing from our listeners and encourage feedback. You can email us at 5ishfangirls@gmail.com. You can also like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/5ishfangirls. Thank you so much for listening, and may the squee be with you.